Picture a Paleolithic morning, mist curling over grassy plains, distant silhouettes of wild cattle grazing, while a small band of humans fans out across the terrain. Their task is not luxury, not choice, but survival. For early Homo sapiens and their cousins, food was whatever they could find, wherever it could be wrestled from the earth. This was a world before supermarkets and agriculture. The menu was dictated by landscape, season, and sheer luck. Archaeological sites like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania reveal piles of stone flakes, animal bones, and charred plant remains, clear evidence that our ancestors were improvisers. They ate fruits when trees bore them, tubers dug with sticks when the soil allowed, insects when protein was scarce, and meat whenever the chase or scavenging paid off. The variety was staggering. Grass seeds, bitter herbs, grubs, even lizards and birds' eggs. Nothing was too small or too strange to try. Some anthropologists argue that this wide diet is precisely why humans survived where other hominins faltered. The ability to digest both plants and animals, to chew fibrous roots or gnaw marrow bones, gave our species resilience against famine and climate shifts. Scholars still debate whether this flexibility or the pursuit of calorie-dense foods like meat was the true driver of our evolutionary edge. But there were quirks too. Evidence suggests that some groups ate insects not only out of desperation but with preference, favoring protein-rich termites or honey-laden bee larvae. What seems repulsive to modern palates may have been delicacy to Paleolithic ones. A recent study of dental tartar from Neanderthal remains even revealed traces of mosses and medicinal plants, an early form of self-doctoring through diet. It wasn't glamorous. There were no guarantees, no certainty that a hunt would succeed or that a berry wasn't poisonous. The record at sites like Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel shows burned nuts and seeds from nearly 780,000 years ago, hinting at careful selection. Each meal was an act of knowledge: which plants were safe, which insects worth the risk, which animals could be stalked without catastrophe. And so our first picture of the caveman diet is not one of meat alone, but of endless searching and improvisation. It was a diet painted in shifting colors: red berries, pale grubs, earthy tubers, and the occasional bloody prize from a hunt. To be a hunter-gatherer was to be endlessly adaptable, endlessly alert, and always aware that today's feast might give way to tomorrow's hunger. The image of a caveman gnawing on a roasted haunch of mammoth is iconic, but the reality was often more precise and more desperate. What early humans truly hungered for was not just meat but what lay hidden inside: marrow and fat. At sites like Kubifora in Kenya, archaeologists have uncovered ancient bones split open with stone tools, revealing that marrow was deliberately extracted. These greasy, nutrient-rich reserves carried dense calories, perfect for fueling brains that were, by then, expanding to sizes demanding enormous energy. In fact, marrow and organ meats may have been even more important than muscle flesh. Scavenging often came before hunting, with humans trailing predators and cracking into the leftovers that lions or hyenas left behind. Long before spears could reliably pierce thick hides, sharp stone flakes gave access to the enterprise. This was resourcefulness disguised as brutality, and it changed everything. Fatty acids like DHA, abundant in marrow and brain tissue, are believed by many scientists to have played a role in the cognitive leap that set humans apart. Scholars still debate whether it was consistent meat access or other plant resources that fueled this growth, but marrow's role cannot be dismissed. The pursuit of meat also shaped human cooperation. A single hunter rarely brought down large prey. It required coordination, planning, and shared risk. Butchering a carcass was equally social: different hands stripping hide, slicing muscle, or prying bones apart. Distribution, too, carried meaning. Who received the choicest cuts could decide hierarchies and alliances within a group. In this sense, meat was more than nutrition. It was power, politics, and ritual. There are curious twists to this story. Some archaeological finds suggest that humans weren't above recycling bones themselves, smashing them multiple times to scrape out the last smear of marrow. Others show cut marks on human bones, evidence that cannibalism may have entered the diet, whether through ritual, necessity, or both. To modern sensibilities, it is shocking, but in a world where every calorie mattered, survival blurred boundaries. What's striking is how central bone-breaking became to our story. It wasn't glamorous hunting trophies, but splintered remains that carried the true gift of sustenance. One can almost picture the sound. a sharp crack echoing on a Paleolithic plain, followed by the silence of people bent over a prize of yellow fat. That crack signaled life continuing for another day. When humans first tamed fire, they gained more than warmth and light. They rewrote the menu of life. Evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating to about 1 million years ago, shows burned plant ash and charred bone fragments, suggesting that our ancestors were already experimenting with controlled flames. Cooking was not a decorative flourish. It was a revolution that made once dangerous foods digestible, broke down tough fibers, and neutralized natural toxins hidden in roots and tubers. Fire meant safety in the stomach. Raw meat carries parasites, and many plants resist digestion until heat softens their walls. By cooking, Paleolithic humans extracted far more calories from the same foods. The anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that this caloric boost may explain why human guts became smaller, while brains grew larger, a biological trade-off powered by flame. Scholars still debate whether fire use was consistent across all early human groups, or whether mastery came in bursts, lost and rediscovered in different regions. But beyond biology, fire transformed culture. Picture a circle of flickering light on a dark steppe, hunters and gatherers huddled together, sharing roasted tubers and strips of meat. The hearth became more than a cooking station. It was a theater for storytelling, a classroom for children, a stage for rituals. Food prepared in the fire's glow was no longer only fuel. It became communal, drawing people into bonds of trust and cooperation. Fire also expanded the menu. Starchy roots that were nearly inedible raw became staples when roasted. Seeds and nuts could be ground and warmed to release oils and flavors. Even honey, when warmed, became easier to mix into other foods. Archaeologists studying ancient hearths in Israel and Europe have found layers of ash intermingled with nutshells, seeds, and fish bones, revealing how diverse these cooked meals could be. A quirky detail: some scholars propose that the first barbecue may have been accidental, meat dropped into flames during butchery, discovered later with a new aroma and softened texture. Cooking also extended time. Roasted meat kept longer than raw flesh, protecting scarce resources from spoilage. This too altered social rhythms, allowing planning for tomorrow rather than endless scrambling for today. In the dance of flame and shadow, humans gained not just calories but foresight. The mastery of fire was a quiet turning point. It turned survival into something more than chance, transformed the very chemistry of digestion, and began to weave the fabric of culture. Every grilled meal today, every kitchen stove carries a faint echo of those first sparks struck against stone. For much of prehistory, human survival was not only tied to plains and forests but to the shimmer of water. Rivers, lakes, and coastlines offered a buffet unlike anything on dry land. Archaeological evidence from sites such as Pinnacle Point in South Africa, dating back nearly 160,000 years, reveals shells, fish bones, and charred seaweed, signs that our ancestors gathered seafood long before farming or settled villages. These foods were not merely convenient, they were catalysts for migration and innovation. Fish and shellfish provided dense, reliable nutrition. They were rich in omega-3 fatty acids, iodine, and protein, nutrients essential for brain growth and function. Scholars still debate whether reliance on coastal resources directly fueled the leap to symbolic thought and complex language, but many point to the correlation between seafood diets and the emergence of advanced tools and art in coastal communities. It is striking that some of the earliest known beads crafted from shells come from these same shoreline settlements. Food and culture seem to have flowed together. The practical advantages of water diets were clear. Unlike a dangerous hunt on open plains, shellfish could be collected by hand, fish trapped with woven nets or spears, and waterfowl eggs gathered in abundance. Tides and migration cycles created predictable calendars of nourishment. Quirky traces remain in archaeological middens, enormous heaps of discarded shells stretching meters high, the Paleolithic equivalent of ancient trash piles. These refuse mounds tell stories of repeated visits, feasts, and perhaps even territorial claims over productive bays. Waterways also became highways. Groups following rivers and coastlines carried not just food but knowledge, spreading tool-making traditions, fire use, and genetic lineages across continents. Some anthropologists argue that migrations out of Africa may have followed kelp highways, corridors rich with edible seaweed, shellfish, and fish that guided early humans toward Asia and beyond. Whether this theory holds fully true remains debated, but it highlights how food shaped the very paths of human expansion. There is also evidence of experimentation. At lakeside camps in Africa, burned fish bones suggest roasting, while in Ice Age Europe, carvings show fish being speared. Some groups even fermented fish in pits, a primitive precursor to dishes still found in northern cuisines today. The intimacy with water and its creatures left fingerprints on myth, ritual, and diet alike. To picture the ancient meal, imagine a fire crackling near a tidal pool, mussels pried from rocks, fish sizzling on stones, children cracking open shells while elders tell stories of the tide. Water gave sustenance but also rhythm and stability in a world where survival often felt like chance.
The Paleolithic diet was never steady. It was a cycle of extremes. For every season of abundance, there came one of scarcity, and the rhythm of survival depended on enduring both. Archaeological remains from Europe's Ice Age caves reveal animal bones clustered in seasonal patterns. Reindeer hunted in winter, migratory birds in spring, salmon in summer, but between these pulses of plenty were long stretches when the land seemed barren, when hunger gnawed louder than wolves at the camp edge. Survival in such cycles required remarkable flexibility. Humans learned to dry meat strips, smoke fish, and store nuts in pits sealed with earth. At DOLM, V.S. in the Czech Republic, archaeologists uncovered evidence of mammoth fat preserved in frozen soil, a Paleolithic pantry. Yet even with clever storage, famine loomed large. Skeletons from periods of scarcity show lines etched in bones and teeth, markers of interrupted growth, suggesting that hunger struck hardest at children. Scholars still debate whether famine acted as a selective pressure driving innovation, forcing humans to invent better tools and strategies, or whether it was simply endured with grim patience until better days returned. Scarcity also shaped culture. Some groups turned to ritual feasts when food reappeared, perhaps to reinforce bonds after long deprivation. The cave paintings at Lascaux, depicting bison and deer, may not have been mere art but visual prayers for abundance. Etched when bellies were empty, quirky evidence of storage emerges too. Clay-lined pits that held roasted acorns, or piles of charred seeds, hinting at experimentation with hoarding even before true agriculture. Hunger demanded a wide net. When animals migrated, people ate roots, bark, or insects in lean seasons. Some even gnawed on bones left long in the dirt, scraping the last flecks of dried marrow. The archaeological record at sites like Elmire and Cavemen, Spain shows humans shifting diets rapidly, from meat-heavy to plant-heavy. As climate shifts altered what the land offered, flexibility was the only insurance against collapse. And yet, hunger built resilience. Our bodies still carry echoes of these cycles, mechanisms for fat storage, cravings for sugar, and the ability to fast for days. The thrifty gene hypothesis, though debated, suggests that our tendency to store calories efficiently may be an evolutionary inheritance from ancestors who survived through famines. Picture the Paleolithic winterer, snow muffling the land, the fire pit glowing faintly, the clan chewing on dried meat strips saved from autumn's hunt. Every bite was rationed, every ember guarded. Survival was not just about what they ate, but how they endured the long silence between feasts. What cavemen ate is not just a matter of the past, it lingers, invisibly, in our kitchener, our cravings, and our debates about health today. The so-called Paleolithic diet became fashionable in modern times, built on the idea that we should mimic our ancestors by eating meat, nuts, fruits, and vegetables while avoiding grains, dairy, and processed foods. Yet archaeological evidence shows a more complex reality. Ancient humans ate what they could, when they could, and that included wild grains, legumes, and whatever sweet troves they stumbled upon. Scholars still debate whether the modern reinterpretation of the caveman menu is insight or illusion. Our biology certainly remembers the human love of fat and sugar, so dangerous in a world of abundance, once meant survival in scarcity. A bite of honey would have been a rare jackpot of calories. explaining why our taste buds still light up with sugary delight. Third, to binge when food is plentiful echoes the seasonal feast and famine cycles of the Paleolithic. Even the social act of sharing meals around a table recalls ancient nights of roasted meat and cracked nuts by firelight. Quirky threads run through our diets. Fermentation, for example, may have begun as accidental rot in food caches, yet today it is celebrated in cheeses, beers, and pickles. Shellfish, once gathered with bare hands on rocky shores, remains a luxury dish on modern menus. Bone broth, simmered in Kitchener worldwide, carries a ghost of marrow cracking from the savannah. Each is a culinary echo, faint yet persistent, of survival strategies tens of thousands of years old. But misinterpretations persist. The pure meat myth paints early humans as relentless carnivores, yet dental plaque studies and grinding stones smeared with starch tell us otherwise. Our ancestors were omnivores, opportunists, experimenters. To eat like a caveman is less about replicating a fixed menu and more about embracing adaptability. Scholars still debate whether the diversity of our ancestors' diets was the very thing that allowed us to thrive across deserts, tundras, and coasts. The truth is less romantic but more profound. We're descendants of improvisers, shaped by hunger, curiosity, and firelight. Every time we crave sweets, every time we gather to share a meal, we're repeating gestures written into our DNA by ancestors who cracked bones, roasted roots, and combed tide pools. Their diet was not a fad. It was a map of survival. The story of what cavemen ate is not just about bones and berries, it is the story of us, our ancestors. Meals were not uniform but endlessly shifting. Marrow and meat, roots and tubers, shellfish and honey, feasts and famines. Fire transformed those foods into culture. Hunger forced innovation. Sharing meals wove communities together. Scholars may debate the precise balance of plants and animals, but the truth is that survival depended on adaptability, not dogma. Today, as we puzzle over diets, superfoods, and health, we're still negotiating with ancient instincts shaped by scarcity. The marrow cracked on the savannah, the fish roasted by the tide, the honey raided from a hive all whisper into our modern appetites. Cavemen did not eat to be pure or perfect, they ate to live, and because they did, we carry their echoes every time we lift food to our lips.